Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the launch of our second report in our What Workers Want series. If you could just note that this webinar will be recorded and available afterwards for playback. By way of a brief introduction, my name is Mike McDonough and I'm joined by Enda Daly, Recruitment Manager at EY. After taking you through some of the key findings from our report, I'll pass you over to Enda, who will bring the report to life, giving us an overview of what they're doing in EY to address some of the issues that have been highlighted in the report. After that, we'll take a few questions at the end. This year, our What Workers Want report provides insight into what makes a successful applicant journey. The findings should help you as employers to understand your strengths and weaknesses throughout the applicant journey and identify where you potentially might be at risk of losing skilled professionals. To compile the report, we carried out an extensive survey in February this year, which received over 1,850 responses from candidates' employers across Ireland. The survey was completed by professionals from a variety of organisation types and sizes across public and private sectors. This year, the report specifically focuses on the applicant experience, what attracts or detracts somebody from applying to or accepting a role across 4 key stages: search, apply, decide and join. The search stage includes the role of brand awareness, employer value proposition, the applicant job search preferences, what's in your job advert, and the ease of finding information about the employer. The apply stage includes applicants' experiences when they've applied for jobs, through the application method, how long it takes, and the feedback and communication received. The decide stage includes the structure and experience of the interviews, interaction with the hiring organisation, interview feedback and the compliance process and the offer process, and the join stage includes induction, onboarding, and how long does it all take. Within the search, apply, decide and join, we've identified the key factors that determine the success at each stage of the applicant journey, but we've also looked at what we think are the roadblocks. By using the insights from this report, you as employers can compare the experience that you offer to what candidates are actually experiencing. Maybe map out your own journey, identify weak points, and get your organisation ready to compete for the best candidates in the market. Looking closely at the 4 stages, we've compared the employer's perception against the candidate experience at each stage. And while both start out at a similar level at search, the applicant's rating of a quality of experience declines. So clearly what they see at the outset isn't what occurs at the end. More interestingly for me, employers are admitting that the second half of the journey is not as positive as at the beginning of the journey. We should be asking ourselves why this is. Based on our research, 2 out of 3 applicants at one time or another across any of the 4 stages have been deterred from completing their application, with the main contributing factor being a generally poor applicant experience. Think about how hard you have to work to get these people engaged in the first place. You're not losing candidates because of the job or your company. It's the process. Everyone concedes that first impressions are important for you as interviewers, but now also for the candidates themselves. So what emphasis do you put on first impressions? The biggest gap that we see in satisfaction between the employer and applicant, the decide stage, where there's a 13 percentage point difference in perceptions, including the structure and experience of interviews. We need to bear in mind that many candidates are bound to complain about the interview processes because very few people have a 100% record in interviews. However, even with that in mind, these numbers need our attention. What are the main reasons? 39% of candidates cited unprepared interviews, followed by poor communication regarding the process and that the process was too long at 34%. So this is what's causing the applicant dissatisfaction. The lack of an interview structure was also right up there at 33%. We think these are areas that we should be easily able to review within our organisations and ensure that we're prepared, have structure, analyse how we communicate with applicants. We've some recommendations at the end that I'll run through with you, and we can also share with you an online tool that we're developing that will support you in these areas. It's also worth noting that poor experiences do not end once an applicant starts a new job. Just under half of professionals say that they've left at least one job in the first year because it did not match the expectations formed during the application process. So not only are organisations wasting time and money during the interview process, we're also wasting valuable time and money training and inducting new employees who have been sold something that doesn't turn out to be true. Other reasons for the job not meeting expectations after starting. Salary is something that's oversold, but 40% of people have said that the job ad content was misleading and didn't actually match the job. And 47% said that the expected training wasn't provided. So again, we're selling something to candidates here that doesn't actually turn out to be true, and that is damaging. So what do workers want from the application journey? I looked at these 4 recommendations and I thought to myself, these are all things that I'm sure everyone on this call would want when they're looking for a job. So it's not difficult to understand why we're recommending these things. Candidates want employers to be transparent and authentic. They want an efficient process and personalized communication. And they want to feel welcomed when they join an organization or even when they interact with an organization during the interview process. So today's candidate expects to be able to find out almost everything about an employer before they join. And interestingly, half of the professionals we surveyed wouldn't consider applying for a position if they can't find all of the information they require. The type of information or evidence they want to find is, does this organization invest in its employees' personal development? Does this organization offer its employees a career plan? Does this organization publicly commit to equality, diversity, and inclusion? If we don't, as employers, make this information easily accessible, then candidates might be deterred right from the outset of the search stage of the applicant journey. As I mentioned earlier, when researching prospective employers, candidates are looking for authenticity. So to learn about what it's actually like to work for an organization, applicants turn to both current and ex-workers for first-hand insights. Hence, we would strongly recommend that you regularly conduct employer brand health checks, as 64% of candidates say they've been discouraged from applying to a job after reading negative reviews online about an organization. For example, at Hays, we actively manage our Glassdoor profile to try and ensure a positive and authentic experiences are recorded. Interestingly, on the flip side, many employers don't consider review sites and staff testimonials to be an important part of their candidate attraction strategy, with nearly half of employers saying that they are unsure or unaware of the sentiment of employee feedback online. I believe Enda will speak to you later about what they're doing at EY to address this point. Applicants want efficiency in the process, and again, many of them are deterred by lengthy and inefficient processes and delays in communication. And I think in the current market, with candidates being in such short supply, this is a big own goal for organizations. Our findings reveal a clear mismatch between the employer and the applicant's expectations of how long the application process should take. For example, during the apply stage of the journey, 81% of candidates will consider abandoning an online application once it's taken over 15 minutes. While speed of process is important, it's also clear communication along the journey that keeps applicants engaged. For example, 56% of applicants say it's important to receive confirmation of moving to the interview stage within a week of applying, but only 34% of employers meet this expectation. Following the final interview, 51% of applicants expect to hear within 3 days if they've been successful, but over a third of employers do not meet this expectation, taking up to a week or more. So employers are losing good candidates due to lengthy processes. Amazingly, 1 in 4 surveyed said that they took another job following a verbal offer because the process took so long. So much effort, time, and money has gone into the process at this stage, and it's so disappointing to lose somebody at this point. We also found that applicants are more likely to apply to a role if the process is easy and provides personalized functionality and communication. While 33% of employers know their career sites provide a neutral to very poor experience to applicants, over half say they are not investing in their career sites' functionality as part of their candidate attraction plan for the year ahead. The kind of functionality candidates are looking for is the ability to edit and submit CVs, save search criteria for another time, and the ability to set up job alerts. Despite applicants' expectations of a simple and streamlined online processes requiring fewer touch points with an employer, our research also shows that applicants still want the option for personal interaction as part of the process. 76% say this is important during the decide stage, and it rises to 90% during the join stage. However, over 2/3, 72% of applicants say it's also important for them to have a contact person who can provide status updates on their individual application during the apply stage. The absence of such a contact person can have a negative impact on the process overall. For example, of those applicants who say they've had a bad experience with an employer's career website, 27% attribute this to not having a contact person available during the apply process. Again, is this something that could be easily rectified in your organisation? Finally, as we've said there, the human element is so important. From the way people are greeted at reception to experiencing the office environment, applicants are assessing all interactions with a potential employer. If the initial first impressions are negative or unwelcoming, you are running the risk of losing out on people. Remember, applicants have lots of options in today's markets, and they want to feel welcome. Almost 2/3, or 62% of applicants, want to meet their direct reports during the interview stage, but only 13% of employers offer this opportunity. However, the welcoming process shouldn't stop once the job has been accepted. Once they've joined the organisation, new staff say the most important part of their induction is to spend time with their team. Yet only 59% of employers prioritise this as a standard part of the induction process. So to sum up, a good applicant journey is key to attraction. Our research has found that candidates are being deterred from applying due to poor experiences along the applicant journey. They encounter a few common roadblocks, including meeting with unprepared interviewers, negative employee reviews, online applications taking longer than 15 minutes, receptionists or staff that give a negative first impression. So our recommendations. Firstly, we need to speed up the process. Determine how long it takes to complete each stage of your application journey. Benchmark your times against the expectations of candidates to identify where your processes may be falling short of expectations. Review your application requirements for applicants. For example, are you asking for information that's either unnecessary or could be provided at a later stage, thereby speeding up key points along the journey? And you should look at creating a standardized protocol for interviews and applicant communication, and review the time it takes to complete the process, but also what communication is going to the applicant at each interval. Secondly, invest in the online experience of applicants. Ensure that your website or your portal is mobile optimized. Provide the ability for applicants to start and stop their application and to update their profiles, edit their CV, and upload additional profiles. If your online portal or site requires multiple steps, ensure it's clear to the applicant throughout the process where they are in the process and how long it will take. If you think about the e-commerce sites that you use that frustrate you, that's what we're talking about here. Thirdly, create a structured interview process. If you have a more standardized interview process across your organization, you can start by auditing your hiring manager's current interview capability. Review the interview structures, questioning techniques, the length of number of interviews hiring managers require. Consider investing in training and support for interviewers, improving your hiring manager's overall interviewing and questioning techniques. You do need to be mindful, though, that different types of candidates or roles that you're interviewing for might require different techniques, so consider consulting with an expert to help you understand what techniques are suited to different types of roles. For example, interviewing a developer is going to be a lot different than interviewing a salesperson, and you need to think about how that comes across. Fourthly, make employee reviews part of your attraction strategy. The people and culture of an organization is the most important consideration for candidates when assessing whether to apply for a new role or not. To find out if the culture is being promoted by the employer is authentic, candidates are looking to employer review sites for an honest answer. So it's essential to understand what the current sentiment is about your employer brand online. You can conduct an employer brand health assessment by analyzing the employer review sites and conducting social media listening exercises. You need to address negative feedback by dispelling misconceptions and demonstrating the changes or improvements that you're making. Finally, put in place a process to consistently track employee reviews and leverage the insights for your employee value proposition. Finally, Test your journey. Like any good product, user testing of the applicant journey is key. People, time and processes are the components that have the most influence on whether an applicant could be deterred from completing their application or accepting a role. Do you know what it's like to be a new person walking into your office or workspace? Are your staff welcoming to newcomers? Do you know what people find difficult when they search for your organisation as an employer? And do you know how difficult it is or isn't to apply for a job on your site? You need to be consistently reviewing your process end to end. This report proves first impressions really matter. So audit, assess and refine yours to present your organisation consistently in the best possible light to prospective candidates. That's the end of my part of the presentation. I'm now going to hand over to Enda Daly from EY to give you his impressions on how they've improved their candidate journey.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Enda Daly, the recruitment manager at EY, and delighted to have been invited here by Hayes today just to talk a little bit about the EY experience in terms of our applicant journey. So when we look at EY, we first of all had a look at our own brand. So this is an exercise that we undertook in 2016. We just had a top to bottom look at our recruitment piece, just to have a look and to take stock about where we were. We had noticed at that stage that our business was growing quite quickly, and we needed to see what we could do in order to attract the best possible people we could to our market. So one of the things that we looked at was what their perception, or what people's perception was of us in the market. So, and it was bound to be this, something of a stuffy accountant with kind of caught in the last century, I guess, in terms of its how we thought about things, how we move things forward, how we actually do things, and typically how we actually deal with our people. We knew, however, that the reality of that was very different. We've been building a very young partnership in terms of EY. About 50% of our staff are under the age of 25. It was pretty much the opposite of the perception that we had been creating for ourselves. So the result of us not telling our story was that we were not front of mind as the best candidates. We were not attracting the best graduates, which was impacting then on our ability to grow the best talent from within our own firm. We had low application numbers, a huge drop-off during application. So that was down to a very difficult application process, and one that was way too long, which I'll touch on later on. We had low acceptance rates, so when put in direct competition with one of our other big four, what we found was invariably people were choosing or taking the non-EY option. This led to a very frustrated and unengaged business, and our employer brand was not being managed, and we weren't really doing anything to try and change the perception or the story in people's minds of where they felt about or how they felt about EY. So we had a look then at the tools and channels. So what we really looked at here was how can we portray our message, or how can we get our message across to people. So the first thing we did was to invest in our own recruitment site. So up to that point, EY Ireland was part of the global EY recruitment site. So in the grand scheme of things, if you think of Ireland versus the major EY markets of the US and the UK, our story is a very small one. So it's very difficult to actually be prominently placed on any of those sites to a point where you can actually get some interesting content or material across your own target market or the Irish market. In addition to that, what we were finding was, you know, for people in Ireland, when they were having a look at EY pieces, the content was all US and UK. So it's very difficult for them to relate to, well, what would this mean for me in Ireland if I was to take a role here? All the stories just tend to be from markets elsewhere that I may or may not have anything to actually do with. So we split up our site from undergrads, graduates and experienced, because from recruitment in EY we'd look at these three components very separately. So experienced hire being anybody post-qualified with a couple of years experience, you know, who's able to kind of go to clients or working client side almost immediately. Graduates in terms of our kind of our core business, our historical business of accounting, tax and corporate finance, where, you know, these people will be, or these graduates will go into graduate traineeships, which would be training contracts. So typically 3.5-year training contracts to an accountancy, plus an extra additional 2 years then for tax if you decide to go down that route. And what we've done in the last number of years is to build up a graduate program around management consulting. So even though there is no formalized education in terms of examinations, like you would have with our accounting, what you would get is 3.5 years of on-the-job experience with a number of, say, Prince 2 type exams, if you wish, which allows us to build up that talent pool from within our own firm. And then on the undergraduate pieces, those who are pre-graduation, so first years, second years, university students, and almost into kind of last number of school years now, as you know, I think most employers are having a look at those people who may not, or who may choose not to go to college. And we find our colleagues in the UK have run a very successful what they're calling apprenticeship program, which is taking people directly from school. So that continues to be a target market of interest for us. So what we do with our site, what it's enabled us to do, is to build Ireland-specific content. So we are able to focus on the EY Ireland's message to our target market. So in EY, we essentially break our business down into 4 different areas, each quite different, each with its own story to tell. So what we can do is to tell those stories, because what an accountant might want to hear versus what a management consultant and IT advisory might want to hear are completely different things. So it's important that we would have a channel to be able to reach each of our audiences. So by breaking up the site itself into our major areas, so for assurance, advisory, transactions, tax and financial services, for example, we're for the first time able to show that we have an IT, data analytics and cyber area as well. You know, and this would be an area that wouldn't be traditionally associated with UI. So is one of the first things we try to do is to build our employer brand in that area, was to be able to do this. So our site has actually been really successful in allowing us to do that. So by clicking through there, what you will find is a lot of blogs or different stories about people who are working in EY in these particular areas, some, say, client exposures that they might have had, some information on the technologies that they're using, and, say, some thought leadership pieces just in relation to the world of, say, fintech or blockchain or something like that, you know, where we can actually start to tell people a little bit more about it, and so professionals who are working in those areas can actually see real relevant information for them. We've also begun to invest in Glassdoor. So obviously review sites are one of those things now that you just can't get away from. They're there whether you choose to engage with them or not. So we've really made the decision that, look, it's there anyway, so we need to engage with it, and we need to do whatever we can in order to make the perception of UI to be as positive as it possibly can. So through partnership with Glassdoor, we're able to obviously see everything that comes through. Well, what we've decided to do is to just, so we'll be reasonably confident that they're, you know, going from our own kind of employee survey stats and things, that the engagement with EY is pretty high amongst our own staff. So what we'll ask all of our staff to do, just about to launch this now, is to ask people to have their say on Glassdoor. So let us know, you know, how you feel about EY, what it's like as a company to work for, what your peers are like, what the progression pieces, salaries are like, just so that creates that real and authentic picture. Now, what we won't do is to edit that, or we won't be saying to people, look, you can't put that up, or you know, or listen, any kind of pre-prepared stuff almost. So what we'll do is we'll ask people to just, you know, share authentically their feeling around UI, and look, let's see where that would get us to. But from what we've measured internally already, we'd be reasonably happy that the story should be quite positive. So it's important for us to get it out there. So we're looking forward to seeing some positive results from that. We've also engaged with a Great Place to Work. So Great Place to Work is slightly different than Glassdoor, in that it takes a much more holistic view of an organisation. So it's about more than just recruitment. So what we try to do is to engage with them, taking all of the elements from our kind of wider HR recruitment into different areas of the business to put together a submission for Great Place to Work. Now we've been through two iterations already, and continuing to just work on that submission, just to refine it, to make it better. So we'd be hopeful that next year we'll be able to actually, we will be ranked, I suppose, or get placed as a great place to work. So how to reach people, I suppose, was one of the key things that we thought about when we were building our site or developing our site. So as Mike alluded to there, so mobile optimization is one of the most important things when it comes to getting your message across. So you can see from these here that 46% of people either engage with our site via mobile or tablet, which is a huge percentage. So to not have your site fully optimized for mobile usage is really kind of a recipe for not getting the most out of it, or not getting as much value as you can. What we found is through a research piece when we were doing this that most people search for a job on a commute on the way home after a bad day. So what we wanted to be is to be able to be kind of front and easy to access for them, so they will be able to not only see the EY piece but also be able to engage with our content. So what we've looked to do is, for the 2 years since we've launched the site, is to develop really easily digestible content which is very easily shared on mobile. So we're looking to reduce, say, the amount of words and then, or the amount of text, and then replace that with some video content, some audio content, and then some graphics as well. So we're trying to keep our message real. So what we do is we encourage our staff to write blogs for us about what it's like to work in EY, what it's like to work in their particular area, and what it's there to share their experiences. And what we don't do here is to edit them. So whatever somebody puts up, we're happy to post it. Look, that gives the an real authenticity about what it's like to work in Ireland. Some of them are more positive than others, but each one of them goes a long way to telling the story about what it's like to work in EY. Not every day is a great day, but there are more good ones than bad ones, a lot more good ones than bad ones, so we just want to be very clear about, yes, there are challenges in coming to work for our business, but there are also a huge reward out of it as well. So, we don't want to shy away from that, and we want to give people a real sense of what it's like to work with us. We also create some, as I mentioned, some video content. This is a short video that we created quite recently for our South African cohort. So we have a large population of South Africans working with us at the moment, and we just continue to recruit from that market. So what we try to do here is just to create a little piece of video which showcases to their colleagues or their countrymen back in South Africa what it's like to work with EY. And that was a barbecue piece that we put on for when South Africa played England in the first test at Rugby a couple of weeks ago. We also have create some podcasts. So we found podcasts to be a really engaging medium for sharing some kind of longer form content. So if you think about what it would actually take to explain the, say, future of finance data analytics in a text form would be quite long, whereas a 25-30 minute conversation that's easily digestible, it can just be listened to on your way home, out for a walk or a run or whatever, has worked out really well. And we find our engagement with this piece, which is something that we've only just launched in the last couple of months, has been really, really positive. So it just allows us to build a brand in areas that we never really would have been in before, and that's really important for us. So this has actually been a very positive outcome over the last couple of months. So our application process itself then, so we, at the time when we were building our website, your application time for a graduate program in UI probably took you about 3 hours, unbelievably. So we were asking for an quite amazing amount of detail when you look at your college results, your leaving cert results, why you wanted to work in UI under several different headings, probably impossible to complete in one go, so it would take several visits. But we reckoned it was about 3 hours. Now, we weren't alone. Most of the Big Four were all the same. And I suppose there was probably a real kind of comfort in, look, everybody's asking for this, so we should do it too. So we took a really long, hard look at ourselves at that stage and just asked, why do we do this? Realistically, what are we doing with this information? Do we need it at the beginning? And, how can we make that better? So we reduced our application time on that side to 15 minutes, and the very next year saw a 234% increase in completed applications, which is absolutely massive. So probably the sign of the success is that each of our major competitors have also now reduced their application time down to about 15 minutes. So it just shows sometimes I think you just have to have a really hard look at yourself and ask yourself, why am I asking for these details, and realistically, can I make a decision without it? So the application requirements itself then, so just keep it simple, to keep it short. Realistically, what do you need right now? Allow for the time that it takes to get a decision. So realistically for us, by the time somebody applies and a screening process takes place and then a second screen, that CV gets sent to a business for review, by the time that comes back, the reality of it that is it's going to be more than a week, or it's going to be about a week. So as Michael alluded to, people want to hear within 3 days. Physically, we're just not able to do that at the moment in our business. So what we would make sure to do is to say, look, thanks very much for your application. Here's how it's going to work, and this is a suggested timeline of how long you think it's going to take. So we are realistic. We say, like, it's more 4 to 5, or 5 to 6 days in order to get a decision. But it's to allow for the time that the business are going to take over your CV to build that into your timeline. And then you can get the rest later. So realistically, like, do you need much more than a CV to just make a decision? At the moment, if you need more information, you can always go back and ask the candidate. What you're looking for is to create or to remove the barriers to entry from a CV. So, just to make it as easy as possible to get that in the top. If there's an indication then that you're interested in detail, you can always go back and ask for more. So the interview process itself is to control what you can control. So that's to make sure that your interviewers are really well trained, that they know exactly what they're asking for. That they represent your brand really well. They bring an energy to it, and they're there for a two-way conversation. Because we find now, it's such a candidate-driven market that very much it's as much about the candidate interviewing the interviewer as it is about the other way around. So it's just to make sure that everybody who goes into that from an EY point of view is well trained, knows exactly what they're doing. Their interview template is there in terms of how to run that interview, what they should be asking, what they shouldn't be asking. And that way then what you're trying to do is to create a situation where everybody in the room can have a positive experience. Does the candidate have a contact in our organization? Yes, they do. So what we try to do is that we create or align. So when somebody comes in terms of a screening piece, that they send a CV, that they get a contact person within the business. So be that a recruiter or a coordinator or somebody that they can speak to and reach out to. So what you're doing is creating that relationship. So what we find is, through the discussions or conversations that are happening there, you often find a little kind of glimmer of information that could be useful into the future, or you're getting to know your candidate a little bit better. So through the personalization, we find then that people kind of tend to engage more with the brand because they're engaging more with the people that are behind that brand, and that's kind of been our first step to trying to build it up. To represent the brand in the workplace, so really just get your interviewers to engage the candidate. So really that they're behind the brand, that they really they get it, they're passionate about what we do, or they're passionate about what they do, and that then will come across in the interview. So if we can then create an environment where the interviewer or the interviewee is really engaged, is really interested in the conversation topic that's going on, hopefully then that will lead to, if there's a 50-50 call on the table between us and somewhere else, because invariably candidates often have more than one option these days, what we want to say, look, if the work is the same, if the technology is the same, we want them to say, well, look, the differentiator there is the people that I met. And so what we try to do is just to make sure that our interviewers are really engaged when it comes to interviewing. And then it's the candidate meeting the right people, or vice versa. So realistically, what we're trying to avoid here is that candidates are meeting people for the sake of meeting people. So that they're meeting with their hiring managers, or they're meeting with potential stakeholders in terms of technology or candidates or clients that they might be working with. But each candidate or each conversation they have is a necessary conversation and is adding value to the process, rather than they should meet this person, or they should meet that person, which is then resulting in 2, 3, 4, 5 interviews in some cases, which are, some of which are totally unnecessary, and where that candidate knows that the person that they're talking to might not be somebody that they will be working with or will be that closely connected with, it can lead to a poorer experience. I think extending an offer, there's a more value if it feels personal, and we feel that it really does. So, what we try to do in this instance is, you try and gauge your candidate and you gauge the experience they would have had. So, if somebody has had a really good experience with their recruiter, for example, maybe it's better that the offer might come from their recruiter if that's where the better relationship might be. But if they get on particularly well with their hiring manager or their interviewer, what we'd say is to those interviewers, would you like to make this offer? If it went that well, if you've got a really good relationship with that person, if you've got a really good connection, wherever we feel the kind of the outcome or the likely outcome for success might be around that offer extension, we're happy to do that. But it's important then that we build and keep that personal connection between the brand ambassador with EY and the candidate. And from then, that's it, isn't it? The hard work is done, or is it? So what we look at then at that stage is the arrival. So this is what we look at. So from somebody verbally accepting an offer to the day that they walk in, typically anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks, and what sort of experience they have. So they may still get an approach from somebody else along the way. They may have been part of another. It might be obviously a counter of their current employer. So what I think you need to do is to really manage those people and just to make sure that they're having or continue to have a really good experience along the way. So we would have a contact person for each one of those. We'd reach out to them a number of times just to make sure that they have everything they need. We would do quite a lot of international recruitment as well, so the journey time is a little bit longer there. The moving countries can be is a little bit daunting. So what we try to do is to demystify those that journey as much as we can. So making sure that their bank account, their interview or their appointment to set up bank account is set up, help them out with their to get their visas, and then just make sure that they have everything they need in order to get started. And then we look to your new joiner piece then. So the new joiner is so from the day they walk in the door until afterwards, so say their first maybe 30 or 60 days. So what we look to do is just really engage the business so that they make sure that they're looking after them, that they have processes in place for welcoming new people into the team. So, there's somebody there to look after them. There's somebody there for their, their initial questions. Their laptops are set up properly. Their technology works exactly like it should do. And just to make sure that it's a positive first experience. So obviously, starting a new job can be quite daunting. So we want to make sure is that, the things that we can control, we're not making it even more daunting experience by things going wrong or nobody looking after them, or kind of just want to make sure that they're well looked after. And then after that, it's like an extension of that discussion. So maybe after the first kind of 30 or 60 days and beyond, so when people are beyond the new piece, and they become part of the team, so they're fully functioning, a lot of, they're contributing well, they're doing exactly the job that they were hired to do, and what comes as part of that, or what helps that. So we would look at our own business, there's a really big role within that to make sure that people can grow and flourish within the teams, and what we do is we work with closely with our learning and development team and with our business as well to really encourage that, so that people get exactly what they need in order to be to become part of the team. So that's it for me. So what I might do is just hand back to Mike for any questions that you might have.
And thank you for that excellent insight. I think it's great to see such innovation in what is a really competitive recruitment market within the Big Four accountancy consultancy sector. And I think what he's shown there is how taking an honest look at themselves, plus some brave decisions, has helped EY become even more competitive in their sector. So fair play, and thank you for that. And you also managed to get a dig in about England losing the rugby to South Africa as well, so thanks for that also. So we're now able to take questions, and what I'd ask you all to do, if you could, if you have a question, is to just type that question into the Q&A box, which is in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and we'll hopefully be able to work through some of those questions. So there's one or two questions coming through at the moment that we'll handle. So the first question, what's the best way to ensure that our employee reviews paint a fair picture of our organisation during the applicant journey? So this is a good question. I mean, our research shows that the people and culture of an organisation is important, probably the most important consideration for candidates when assessing whether they apply or not. And they do look at these review sites. So I think, as Enda said, you've got to take ownership of this, and we've done this at Hayes. What you don't want to do is to try and bend the truth. So, you will get negative feedback. We've had that at Hayes. I'm sure EY have had that as well, and I think really important there what you do is you respond to it, but also you try and learn from it, and you try and demonstrate that you've learned from any themes that might be coming up through some of those review sites. But also, you know, what we do, and it sounds like what EY does as well, is to really encourage employees to post reviews, but we're not leading those people to put anything in particular, but we want people to put authentic reviews around what it's like to work for those organizations. I think you want somebody in your organization to oversee those channels, make sure it's part of their role to track any online reviews. And again, there's recommendations around this in our report, so don't forget to request your copy. There's a question here I'm going to pass over to Enda, which is something that you'll be very familiar with. Do you have any tips for improving the applicant journey when it comes to hiring graduates? If I can pass that to you, Enda.
Sure. In terms of the graduate piece, I suppose the one thing that we've really noticed around the graduate bit is the messaging that goes from graduates to experienced hires is quite different. So when we look at what we're actually telling grads, a lot of it is there's a lot of education required versus what would be required for somebody who's been working in a particular role for a couple of years. So what we try to do is to really break down each of the areas that we would have and explain to them, you know, this is the type of work or this is the type of environment and clientele that you would be dealing with. And then it's just to really give them a glimpse of, you know, what it's like to be in here and doing that job. So what we do is we really rely on and lean on our group of existing graduates, so year 1 and year 2 grads, to tell their story, you know, what it's like to be here, what it's like to be coming from a particular course or a particular stream of education. They will really resonate with people who are currently studying that area and who are thinking about making the move. So what we're trying to do is to look, to try and simplify it, demystify the whole process of moving from or choosing to work with AI or with EY, and what we just try to do is to create engaging content for them that makes it very easy for them to get a better understanding about what it's like to work there. So we do a lot of video piece with that, some kind of online graphics sort of thing as well. And then we bring people in for a lot of Discovery EY days, you know, where they can come into the firm, have a look around, just see what it's like to work there. And then our campus guys, our graduate recruitment team, do a great job out in campus, talking to classes, you know, just telling them exactly what it's like to work at EY and what an opportunity might look like for somebody here.
Great, thanks for that. And I think just to add to that as well, you know, we're talking about younger workers here, so you know, the sort of Generation Z. You know, they'll look at those social media profiles. So again, you need to think about that. There's also another thing, that, and again, I'm sure you're on this, and is that those applicants or the younger professionals are saying that they would are more likely to apply to an organisation who demonstrated a public commitment to equality, diversity, and inclusion. And so again, I think that's something that we've got to make sure we are promoting on whatever channel it is that you are using to promote your organisation as an employer. I think one thing that Enda mentioned earlier on a couple of times was that they're telling a story, and I think that's absolutely essential, that you've got to tell a story about what your organisation is doing in this space. You know, the story will be different to different demographics or different professionals with different skill sets, but tell that story and find a channel to get that story out there. Another question for Enda, what is the average time to hire at EY for professional hires? If you can answer that for me, or give it your best shot anyway, thanks.
So time to hire, I guess, would vary quite a lot, because if we look at, say, our consulting business, which is, you know, there's a lot of activity within that, and what would tend to happen is people are required almost immediately. So, you know, when you have, by the time you advertise to getting your CVs under review and to first, second round interview and to offer, could be as little as, it could be probably your best case scenario would probably be as little as 2 weeks, right? So the reality is, when you're trying to get particularly that detail between, say, from first round's organised, second round and to offer in terms of sign-offs and things, it can really get pushed out to anywhere from kind of like 3 to 4 weeks. But then if we look at our accounting business, for example, which is largely cyclical recruitment. Okay, so everybody will be aware that Big Four accounting busy season is Christmas or January to April, May time. So what we would do is, although we are heavily recruiting for people to join the accountancy practice at the moment, they might not be to start in until January, or also maybe November, December. So the lead-in time there is a lot longer. So that could take anywhere from, by the time your CVs are coming in, your review, your pieces are going on, you could be looking at anywhere from kind of like 6 to 8 weeks on those ones, because the time frames are lesser. But look, the time to hire is a challenge for us, and it's something that we are continuing to work on. Where so the aim is always to try and get people through as quickly as you possibly can, but for us it's about trying to find that balance between being able to do that and being able to largely kind of working with a remote set of stakeholders, because the majority of our business is on a client site within the absence of a physical product to sell. Your people are, like, they're not billable or not making any revenue unless they're on client site. So trying to get everybody back into the one place and kind of lined up for interviews and things can be a bit of a challenge, but one that we continue to work through.
Great, thanks, Ender. And I think, again, something you mentioned earlier is that if you can't make the process very quick because there are logistical issues or trying to get people together, it's really important to try and inform people of what to expect. And I think you're less likely to lose people if you do that, particularly if they're already very engaged with your organisation or they see it as a very attractive option. One last question, I think, here. I'm surprised to hear that so many candidates have had a negative experience during interviews. How can I ensure my hiring managers are conducting an effective interview? So I'll see if I can handle that one. I think, again, the research that we've done suggests that it's very important to have a structured interview process across the organisation. So if you're in the role of looking at this process, you need to audit your current processes, speak to your hiring managers in the organisation and understand what nuances in the approach that exist or that are needed for certain sectors. So again, you're not going to interview a developer or a project manager in IT the same way that you would a salesperson or a marketing person. But I think it's important that you find out how those people are interviewing their applicants. So when it goes to the line managers, what kind of interview are they doing, and do those people need some support and training on that? You could consider using a third party to help develop and support an assessment process. And that can be one way to do it. Again, the report that we're producing that's available to everybody on the call will help you understand some nuances and requirements across different sectors. And if you'd like some advice on this, please feel free to get in touch with us and we'd be happy to discuss it further and give you any ideas that we might have. But I think that's all the main questions now. So I'm probably going to wrap up the webinar at this stage. Once again, just to thank Ender Daly from EY for an excellent presentation, for giving his time to help us launch the What Workers Want report. The report is available for everybody to get a copy of, so please contact your consultant to arrange for a copy to be brought out to you. If you have any questions, please get in touch. But we look forward to talking to you again at a future webinar. Thank you very much for your time.